There are 5 animal transformations in Donkey Kong Bananza, 5 magical animal forms that Donkey Kong can transform into. So as soon as the game was released, the speedrunning community got together and asked the only logical question: how many of those animal transformations are actually required to beat the game? And thus, they started hunting. Their first trophy: the zebra. Within only a couple of days, they already figured out a way to skip the zebra Bananza altogether. The next animal on the chopping block: the snake. This one turned out to be a bit trickier, but they quickly got rid of it in the run as well. During the first weeks after the game's release, the community pretty much went onto a collective safari, successfully hunting down the first 2 Bananzas in no time. But then, all of a sudden, their hunting efforts came to a sudden halt. The remaining 3 animals all seemed too crucial to the routing and too critical for the game's completion to be hunted down as well. It appeared as if 3 animals were the absolute minimum required to beat the game fast. Most speedrunners moved on and focused their efforts on other things, like discovering glitches or inventing flight. Most people moved on, leaving behind only a very small group of believers. You see, organizing around the edges of Bananza's speedrunning community, there was a small group of people that had not yet given up hope. A small group that was still hopeful. Visionaries that were still dreaming of an any percent speedrun without the Ostrich. This video is their story. Together they planned to eventually hunt down the bird, collecting all ever so small tricks and glitches that might one day allow them to actually pull off the impossible. For the longest time, they remained there, dreaming their dream, ignoring the reality of their situation entirely, waiting for their moment to come. Until one fateful day, everything changed, because there are some recent discoveries in Donkey Kong Bananza that may actually allow their dream to become reality. So in this video, we're going to retrace the step of a hunting effort against all odds. We're going to take a look at why the Ostrich is so crucial to the any percent speedrun of Donkey Kong Bananza to begin with, and we will discuss how a small group of dedicated bird hunters managed to revolutionize the any percent speedrun nonetheless. So gentle ladies, gentlemen, and gentle people in general, are you ready? Then let's do this. Before we start our attempt to hunt down the Ostrich, we first have to ask a question. Why would anyone want to kill an innocent bird to begin with? Which crime has the Ostrich committed? Luckily, this question is easily answered. You see, at the midpoint of the game, we reach the divide and are confronted with a choice. We can either proceed through the forest layer or through the freezer layer. The forest layer is the natural habitat of the Ostrich. So far, the speedrun takes this route specifically to learn the Ostrich transformation there. And this is already the core issue responsible for today's hounding, because as it turns out, running through the forest layer and learning the transformation there is roughly 90 seconds slower than it would be to speedrun through the freezer layer. Those 90 seconds are vitally important. Not only are those 90 seconds a potential time save in the speedrun, they are also the currency with which we can pay for the bird's death. You see, currently speedrunners pay the 90 seconds toll to learn the bird transformation, because the Ostrich ends up saving more than 90 seconds over the course of the rest of the run. If we were to find a way to replace all the current bird time saves with different ostrich-less strategies, then the bird wouldn't be needed any longer in the run. It's those time saves that are keeping the bird alive. To hunt down the bird, we have to hunt down those time saves. So what exactly are those time saves? Well, it's 4 things that currently justify the bird's inclusion in the any percent speedrun. First, the Ostrich allows us to skip the huge chasm in the junction layer. Ostrich flight stalling is just so powerful that it allows us to cross the gap without raising the bridge before. The fact that we can flap over there makes it possible to skip the entire freezer layer altogether. We need to find an equally fast way to cross this abyss without growing wings if we want to get rid of the Ostrich. So the junction skip is the first thing we need to figure out a way to do birdless. Second, we need to find a way to perform the mad mixer skip without the Ostrich. The thing is the following: in the feast layer, there is a pretty important skip that saves over a minute, and that is currently only possible because of the Ostrich impressive flapping power. If we want to kill the bird, we have to either find a way to perform this skip without the bird, or we have to find an alternative skip. We'll talk about the skip in detail soon, but for now, the mad mixer skip is the second thing keeping the bird in the run. Third, we kind of have to find a way to actually beat the game. You see, during the very lead up to the very last boss battle, there is a long bridge section. This section is originally intended to be done with the zebra, but it is pretty easy to make it past it with the snake as well. Unfortunately for us, we neither get the zebra nor the snake transformation in a speedrun, which means the current run uses a pretty crazy ostrich strategy to make it over the bridge. If we want to murder the flappy flap, we have to find a way to pull this off without the zebra, without the snake, and without the bird. Quite a challenge. And the third thing, protecting the winged creature. Finally, we need to figure out fast alternative strategies for all the other little spots in the game where the ostrich saves a little bit of time. Flight stalling is simply so powerful that it allows for tons of little time saves over the course of the run. The best example for such a small time save is probably the auto-scroller bridge that takes place at the planet's core. Here the game wants us to slowly walk on a bridge that tediously forms in front of us. The bird, however, allows us to skip the entire section by just flapping over. We have to figure out a way not to lose any time in all the sections that are like this. So all the small time saves are the fourth and final defense layer that we have to destroy. Those 4 time saves are the magical talismans that are keeping the ostrich alive. To get rid of the bird, we have to find alternative solutions to all those things that do not lose more than 90 seconds in total. If we were to do this, the ostrich is officially nuggets. Awesome, so let's dive into our problems and let's start with the biggest one. We have to figure out a way to make it over the gigantic chasm in the junction without growing wings. But first, something different. Here's an interesting, tiny example of how the routing of a speedrun evolves with time. You see, the last time we chatted about the Bananza speedrun, we took a look at this fun little trick jump that skips an entire sublayer, including a boss in the canyon area. This jump, however, is no longer part of the speedrun. The jump has evolved. Here's what the current world record does instead. Yep, as it turns out, it is faster to jump off the rock here and to land on the little metal thingy instead. Awesome. But this awesomeness raises a question, doesn't it? Why does the monkey jump so far? What makes the monkey go fly fly? Well, that's a rather intelligent question, with a really interesting answer. The thing that is enhancing DK's already impressive athletic capabilities here is called a fat. And fats are a crucial key needed to unlock the ostrich's death. So what's a fat? Well, check this out. Here in the divide, there is a small little wall. Usually this wall is so high that it's impossible for DK to make it over it with just a single jump. DK alone doesn't jump high enough. Neither does a turf surf jump give us enough height to make it over. Just look at this. Pathetic. But fear not, we're not stuck here pathetically hopping in front of a wall for eternity, because here comes our savior, the fat. If we jump and then immediately hit the turf surf button after, followed by an attack while still holding down the jump button then DK fats through the air and actually makes it up the wall. Inspiring. A fat is a fast air turf jump. For whatever reason, there is a small window after jumping in which it is still possible to perform a turf jump. This tech adds a bit of additional height to DK's jump, as well as accelerating him very quickly, allowing us to jump higher and further than usual. This is the main wizardry behind the improved canyon skip, and it is the first magical ingredient required to kill the bird. The second is an incredibly useful trick originally found by TJ Coney. Here's the thing, if we jump with a chunk while jumping, then Donkey Kong performs a double jump, usually. But if we time our jump so that we jump just as we are tearing out the chunk, then the game lets us jump but believes that we haven't jumped yet, allowing us to jump again without dropping the chunk, making it possible to jump off of the chunk as well. Or in simpler words, we perform a triple jump. So why do we bring up this triple jump tech while we're talking about fats, one might ask? Well, because of course, the two techs can be chained into each other, meaning that it is possible to jump while tearing out terrain without the game realizing that we are already jumping. Afterwards, we can fat in air and still double jump off of our terrain. This obviously allows for insane movement shenanigans, providing us with a powerful tool on our hunt. And all of this is actually just the beginning. There's even more trickery possible with fats. Luckily for us, Twirly, the person who originally discovered the tech, made a wonderful tutorial about fats and all their variations. So if you're interested to learn more about fatting, not dating. Curse you autocorrect, no one cares about dates. The people are hungry for fats. So if you want to learn more about fatting or just want to see Monkey twirl in air impressively, I can wholeheartedly recommend his video to you. There's a link in the description. Also, try to remember Twirly, who will make another appearance before this hunt is over. So how do fats help us murder the ostrich? Well, they help us to solve our first huge problem. They help us to cross the chasm in the junction. So how do we jump past the chasm? Well, we don't. It's impossible to make the jump over this abyss. No amount of triple jump fat trickery is going to change that. However, we don't have to skip the bridge. We can actually do something unexpected. We can cross the gap in the intended way. Instead of skipping the bridge, we can raise it. All that we have to do is to reach the other exit platform, and this is where fats actually come in handy. We position ourselves here at the very edge of the platform and fat off of it towards the other exit area. Then the fat gives us just enough reach to make the jump. Over there, we can raise the bridge and cross the chasm in the intended way. Hooray! We took down the first talisman that is keeping the ostrich alive. Only 3 to go. This sound is music to my ears. Sadly, however, platforming over to the other exit and raising the bridge is a bit slower than the strategy that is currently used in the speedrun. Doing this strategy loses us roughly 30 seconds, bringing our already tight time budget down to only 60 seconds. Next up, we need to find a way to pull off the mad mixer skip in the feast layer without the bird. But before we talk about how to pull off this skip without the ostrich, we should probably first establish what this trick is even all about. But to understand the mad mixer skip, we actually have to take a look at a different tech in the game. So let's start at the beginning. Let's begin at the start of the game. In the ingot isle area, there is this small room early on. In this innocently looking room, we can actually perform a glitch with huge implications. All that we have to do is to grab a chunk off of the ground and climb up this wall. If we look carefully, we can see that there is a small overhanging ledge thingy close to the edge of the wall here. If we carefully climb towards this ledge and slowly push Donkey Kong into it, then something very interesting might happen. We might clip out of bounds and are all of a sudden climbing on a wall outside the normal playing field. Climbing up there allows for a couple of very interesting discoveries. So first, yes, they lied to you. The ingot isle is, as a matter of fact, not an island. As a matter of fact, it is a floating cave in a blue void of nothingness, not an island. Kinda makes you wonder what else Nintendo is lying about, doesn't it? But second, and much more importantly, what can we actually do up there? Well, first, we can stop for a moment, take a deep breath and enjoy the beautiful, oceanless scenery. How lovely. Second, we can fall to our death if we are not careful. Third, well, that's kinda it. There isn't much to do up there other than to enjoy the vast brokenness that unfolds in front of us. For now, it is just a neat little out of bounds trick. However, this trick might become useful at some point in the future. You see, Discord user Cantrip, who actually discovered this clip, not only found the trick, but also figured out a way to make it to the end of the ingot isle from up here. A way that is actually faster than the path that the current speedrun takes. Why does the current speedrun take the slower route, I hear you ask? As it finally happened, our speedrunners becoming lazy. Well, certainly not. The reason why the current speedrun takes the slower route is because of a huge routing problem early in the run. We need to collect 3000 gold to escape the hilltop layer. The glitched route on top of the stage sadly doesn't run past any shiny gold pieces, which ultimately makes this route slower. If we ever were to find a way to skip the gold requirement for the hilltop layer, however, then this trick will probably make it into the actual run. Awesome. So there's a useless out of bounds trick possible in the ingot isle. How does this help us hunt down our prey? Well, this trick doesn't. But the fact that this trick does exist does. You see, the way we clipped out of bounds here is because there is an overhanging ceiling above us that somehow pushes us through the wall. This spot, however, is not the only spot in the game in which this is possible. Something very similar can be done in the landfill layer. There, it is possible to clip out of bounds as well, allowing us to skip a lot of digging. Once again, an overhanging ceiling allows us to clip through walls. And this is where things become interesting, because in Bananza, we don't necessarily have to search for perfect overhanging ceilings to clip through. In Bananza, we can actually create our glitched ceilings ourselves. Let's take the disco layer. In the disco layer, we usually have to first escape our little prison cell, free the other Void Kong monkey, and then slowly reach the main disco room. There we have to guide 3 different songs back to the speakers, and only then we're finally able to leave this loud place again. How tedious. Let's skip all of it. First, the gate skip. If we climb towards the center of the gate and then throw a piece of dirt at this very spot then we can suddenly climb through the gate. The piece of terrain acts like a ceiling, similar to the one in the Northern Island, Ingot Isle, or the wall in the landfill layer. We just clip through the gate, escaping our prison without much trouble. And that's just the beginning, because something similar is possible in the next room. Here we grab a nice chunk of the helpful crystal dude, position our Kong in a very specific way on the wall once again throw the piece of terrain at a spot on the wall. Afterwards we climb towards this terrain piece and we die. That one is a bit tricky. We clip through the wall here, but we have to be careful because right behind it is actually a death plane. However, if we climb parallel to the pillar, we're actually able to make it past the door alive and healthy, which means we clipped into the third and final music chase, skipping most of the layer. Those two little wall clips actually save minutes in the speedrun, and it is a similar wall clip that is protecting the ostrich, which finally brings us to the mad mixer skip in the feast layer. So check this out. First, we have to get a dirt chunk into a perfect position up there. This is the setup that I used. Once we got our dirt set up, we can climb up to the terrain and once again slowly clip our monkey through. However, this time we do not merely clip to the other side. This time we clip into a new and exciting place. A place that I'd like to call the out-of-bounds maze of invisible death planes. So why is the out-of-bounds maze of invisible death planes called the out-of-bounds maze of invisible death planes, I hear you ask? Well, because we're now out of bounds in a maze of invisible death planes, obviously. There are several hidden planes here that mercilessly kill us as soon as we come in contact with them. Navigating this drop here is simply a nightmare. We have to memorize the layout of all the invisible death planes if we want to survive the fall here. So why would anyone in their right mind ever want to enter this place? It can't be to prove to the world that ostriches, as a matter of fact, can fly in hot soup. Can it? Why do we enter this maze? Well, because if we navigate it perfectly, it allows us to skip the hamburger switches. Here's what the current world record does. We clip through, swap to the ostrich, and then fly directly through several different death planes to get further out of bounds, which allows us to flap all the way to Makati Max Arena. This skip saves well over a minute, and this skip is only possible because of the ostrich. So, how do we solve this little mess? How do we perform this skip without the bird? Well, luckily for us, the dedicated bird hunters in the Ostrichless Discord got us covered. The following clip has been recorded by Twirly, the very Twirly who also found the Fat Tech. Keep him in mind, he will pop up again before the deed is done. You see, as it turns out, it is possible to climb onto our own piece of terrain once we clipped out of bounds. How do we perform the trick birdless now if we start on top of our own terrain? Well, as it turns out, it is actually surprisingly simple. All that we have to do is to jump off of the chunk while also grabbing it in such a way that we store a triple jump. Now we have to carefully navigate past the out-of-bounds maze of invisible death planes, perform a perfectly timed in-air fed using our stored chunk jump, navigate some death planes some more, and finally triple jump off of our chunk so that we barely make it back into the area close to Makati Mak. That's all that we have to do. We, in this case being maybe 7 people in the world that actually pulled this off so far. So if you're thinking, hold on Ceave, that looks cray difficult, well, then you're obviously correct. But cray difficult never stopped a speedrunner before. Has it? Theoretically, it is possible to perform the skip ostrichless, meaning the second skip that is magically warding the ostrich is destroyed. Even better, performing this trick like that doesn't lose any significant amount of time, meaning that we're still well within our time budget. Hooray! The bird is crumbling. Next we have to find a way to beat the game. So let's talk about the K Rool bridge. The big problem here is that there isn't much of a bridge for us to make it to the boss. The bridge immediately crumbles as soon as we enter it as anything other than a zebra or a snake. Unfortunately for us, we killed the zebra and the snake back in season 1, meaning the only way to make it through this section is to use ostrich flight stalling in combination with some very tricky terrain regrabs on top of the bridge and some alchemical trickery that allows us to transform the fire snakes into gold. Quite the skip. How in all the fuzzy's names are we ever supposed to make it over this bridge if we can't fly? Well, as it turns out, I haven't told you the entire story before when we were talking about fats. As it turns out, there is actually a fat in the game that is infinitely more powerful than a mere fat, an infinitely more powerful fat variation, fittingly called the infinite fat or I-fat in short. So what is an I-fat, I hear you ask? Well, check this out. This trick was originally found by Nigro, and it might very well be the most insane thing I've ever seen in a Donkey Kong game. If we press turf surf, hit jump and attack at the same time immediately after, and then cancel the turf surf, then we did a turf surf jump. Not that exciting yet. However, if we repeat this input sequence at a very tight rhythm and very fast, then we repeat our turf surf jump over and over again. The result looks something like this. Yup. Monkey liftoff like rocket. This little trick sends Donkey Kong flying. And funnily enough, the inputs required to pull this off are really simple. It really is just turf surf, attack and jump at the same time into another turf surf, followed by turf surf, into a jump attack, into a turf surf, and so on, over and over again. But while the input sequence is rather simple, the actual trick is just wow. This stuff is difficult to pull off. Nigro, who found the trick, actually made a music beat to help people to get the hang of the trick. This is what this beat sounds like. Every single instrument here represents an input. This is how fast we have to press our buttons to pull this off. If we push a single button out of rhythm, the trick fails. If we drop a single input, the trick fails. It's several hundred perfect inputs per minute. So I really tried to learn this trick. I really tried for hours. And while it is not that difficult to get 2 or 3 of those chained into each other, pulling this off consistently dozens of times in a row is just insanity. Mashing the buttons fast enough and yet never dropping a single input is so unbelievably difficult and tiring, it's absurd. If you happen to hate your fingers enough to want to learn the trick, Nigro himself made a wonderful explanation video on how the trick exactly works. The link is in the description. But be warned, there are currently probably only around 2,000 people in the whole world that are able to pull this off consistently. But it doesn't matter for our murderous purposes today if a trick can be pulled off by thousands of people or just by one. All that matters is whether the bird lives or dies. So do IFATs allow us to skip the final bridge? Is this the missing puzzle piece to get rid of the bird's third protective charm? Well, yes and no. You see, yes, it is possible to IFAT to the final boss, skipping the bridge section altogether. At least I believe that it is possible. I wasn't able to find footage of someone actually doing it because perfect IFATers are a rare breed to come by. However, this doesn't really help us anyway. The thing is the following. IFATs are actually such a ridiculous tech that completely ruins the otherwise so interesting routing of Bananza. To make things even worse, they are so straining on the fingers that running a speedrun for hours that mostly consists of IFATs is actually a bit of a health risk. And thus the speedrunning community got together and decided to split the speedrunning categories in 2. There is one restricted category that doesn't allow for IFATs and an unrestricted one that actually allows them. Here's the problem. At the time of writing this, not a single person has completed a speedrun using IFATs. Not a single one. And this is not only because the trick trivializes the otherwise so interesting routing, it is also because of tendonitis. So IFATs theoretically allow us to kill the bird without restrictions. But at least currently, unrestricted is a dead category. If we were to just kill the bird in this category, then it would still happily be flapping around in the speedrun that people are actually running. We have to kill the bird in all any % categories. After all, this isn't about getting rid of one ostrich. This is about total extinction and irreversible annihilation. So have we found our master? Is this the protective Horcrux that we can't destroy? Well, certainly not. As it turns out, an especially dedicated Discord hunter named Twirly actually found a way to make it past the bridge without IFATs and without the bird. Try to remember Twirly, who will pop up again before the clock hits midnight. Here's how it's done. Instead of using the ostrich flapping to stall in air, we actually drop the golden ball and jump off of it again as we pick it back up. Now we crush the gold into the snake, pull out another piece of gold, fat towards the next snake, pull out an elephant ball to grind down the fire snake, jump to the other snake, grind down on it with a new ball before fatting into the barrel. Yes, that's a thing. So gentle ladies, gentlemen, and gentle people in general, this crazy trick jump actually allows us to skip the K Rool bridge without the ostrich. And even better, crossing the bridge like this doesn't lose a significant amount of time, meaning we're still well within budget. The third protective charm is destroyed. Do you hear this? This bird isn't singing, it's screeching in pain. Hooray! There is only a single thing left that is keeping the Ostrich alive. One final MacGuffin that is preventing us from succeeding. All that is standing between us and an Ostrich-less run are small sections in the run, in which the Ostrich saves a bit of time, the auto-scroller bridge being probably the biggest time save of them all. We need to find a fast way to make it past this spot without growing wings. And this is the moment in which a very dedicated and brutal bird hunter pops up once more. Twirly. You see, I very much assume that Twirly suffered a traumatizing child experience involving an ostrich and has since sworn revenge or something, given that he's probably the person on the planet that wanted to see the bird die the most. He wanted to kill this ostrich so desperately that he actually came up with a strategy to make it past the bridge section without the ostrich. So before we take a look at how Twirly attempted to skip the bridge, I feel like we have to hype this up a bit because holy fuzzy, this is hype. Pulling off what we're about to witness takes a lot of, let's call it big elephant energy. Like seriously, you need gigantic elephant balls to perform a skip like that. 5 of them, you have to inhale them beforehand and pull them out at the right times. But you know what? It's probably best to let the footage speak for itself. So you ready? Check this out. Yup, that's a thing. It is actually possible to skip the bridge without the bird. And it's not just the bridge. As a matter of fact, every single spot in the game in which the ostrich saves some time can be performed pretty fast even without it. Even better, all the spots combined only lose roughly another 10 seconds if done birdless, meaning that at the time of writing this, the optimal ostrich-less route is roughly 50 seconds faster than the one that gets the bird. So gentle ladies, gentlemen and gentle people in general, the spell is broken, the magic fades, the bird is vulnerable, the deed is done. The Bananza speedrunning Discord server actually did it. The ostrich is dead. Long live the elephant! Hooray! People are actually currently learning the birdless route. It should only be a matter of days until the first birdless runs start to pop up, if they haven't already. That is, if not a new skip is found that actually makes the ostrich faster again. Though I doubt that the bird is ever going to survive for long. After all, he's being chased by one of the most relentless Discord communities in the entire history of hunting. Hooray! So here we have it, an overview over the recent developments in Bananza speedrunning and a recount of the bloodiest bird hunt that ever took place in a video game. Before we wrap this up, just a couple more things. So first, a gigantic thank you to all my patrons whose names are currently flapping by. Those wonderful people do not only regularly get access to small bonus content and little additional scripts, but they are also the people funding me ruining my tendrils for hours in the hilltop layer, failing to learn IFETs. A huge thank you to them for that. Second, if you want to hear me waffle even more about Bananza, I recently made a roughly 50 minutes long critique of the game over on the Perspective channel. So if you missed that and are interested in it, there's a link in the description. Third, I quickly wanted to give a general shout out to the Bananza speedrunning Discord, who is the driving creative force behind the game's slow destruction. This video is 100% based on their community efforts. A huge thank you to them for that. If you're interested in learning more about Bananza speedrunning, it is a great place to get started. Awesome. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this silly little video. If you did, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up, and maybe you feel especially like successfully returning from a bloody hunt today and want to hit the subscribe button as well. Finally, if you really loved the video and want to help stuff like this survive on YouTube, then there is also the option to support the channel via Patreon as well. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, lots of bugs.